Chapter 111, Not Bad. Mera was still training Anna to learn how to better read the magic and power levels around her in preparation for making her own biome in Sophia's domain. Even though the teal fox had a rather playful way of teaching her, the princess still made great progress and showed great potential on a level that even impressed the overseer. "You're doing remarkably well." The two were still in the all-white dome, and Mera had nothing but praise for the princess. "Thank you." Anna seemed proud of herself, too. "That being said, my body is really confused. Exhausted in one moment after I released my magic and then feeling better than new immediately after when you reset my authority. Sorry about that." The overseer scratched her cheek. "A little warning on that, too, you'll be feeling rather sore tomorrow. It's just like an incredible exercise for your body." "Huh." She paused for a moment. "Well, I can deal with that much after having learned so much." "That's the spirit. That being said, the more magic there is around me, the harder it becomes to feel the exact amount. Is there anything I can do about that?" "That's a hard one." Mera tilted her head. Sophia also still has that issue even though she can see magic. At some point, it becomes so dense that it's quite complicated to reliably tell the quantity of particles. I mean, if even Sophia can't do it, I'm happy enough. As the blonde was the benchmark for her, Anna wasn't upset in the slightest. Also, to be fair, you managed to sense up to 150 times your own authority in the area around you. I doubt there will be many opportunities, at least in the near future, where you'd need to be able to feel more. That is true. The princess nodded. On top of that, it's all contained inside this small dome. If I want to make my own biome, it will spread way further, and it will take forever to reach this density, right? Correct. Mera smiled at her. If you're able to amass this much environmental magic in a bigger area, you could feasibly create something on the level of Sophia's cherry blossom forest. Seriously? She got loud. If you spread it out enough, maybe not quite the same diameter, but I don't see why not. Let's go. It was enough for the tiger to get even more excited. Do you want to guess how much magic there is around us now? With a snap of her finger, the overseer's expression turned cheeky. Yes. Alright, how much is it? No, that was my answer. Anna shook her head. How much? And my answer is yes. She stared right at her. This is clearly some 4-digit or higher shenanigans you're showing me right now. No way I could ever make an educated guess here. You get some bonus points for at least noticing the rough idea here. I liked the sass, too. The teal fox gave her another thumbs up. Okay, let's get rid of this dome to try a different approach and see when you can differentiate between magic levels. Saying so, she snapped her fingers again, which caused the all-white walls to disappear, and the green plane below their feet from before reappeared, as well. Okay? The princess looked confused. The total amount of ambient magic will stay the same, but I ordered it to disperse in the area. I want you to constantly feel it and tell me once the density of it becomes thin enough for you to put it in a number based on your own authority. So, basically, a reverse of what we've been doing before. Steadily increasing the magic to the point where it becomes too much for me. Anna tilted her head. Close enough. She nodded. All right. Nodding once, the princess then closed her eyes and began to concentrate on her surroundings to better feel the magic all around her. Around 15 minutes had passed since Mera removed the dome around them and had tasked the princess to feel the magic around them go down in density. How is it going? The fox got curious about her progress. I think I'm getting there. Anna nodded a few times. The feeling is getting clearer. It seems around 200 times my power, but with each passing second, it's getting lower, and I can sense it better. She closed her eyes for a moment. I'm pretty confident in saying it's about 175 now. Oh ho, you even squeezed out an improvement over earlier, not bad. Mera smiled at her. There really is something about tigers being more sensitive to magic, after all. Mother mentioned that she's good at sensing the powers of others, but it's nowhere near this level. Well, I think, at least. She has nowhere near your current authority, either. She shook her head. It gets amplified by that. Oh, I see. The tiger understood the connection. Wait, so if my authority grows, if that's possible, my ability to sense magic gets better, too? With a bit more training alongside it, yes. Mera nodded. That's so cool. It's lovely to see how much all of this excites you. The overseer liked how invested Anna was in the topic. Of course. Anyway, shall we take a break for the time being? I'd say you earned it. Yes. The princess liked the idea. My body yearns for a comfy sofa. The exhaustion from the training is setting in, huh? Again, look forward to tomorrow. You'll feel it in every fiber of your being. Okay, let's relax for a bit. Smiling at the tiger with the complicated expression, Mera snapped her fingers again, and the two instantly disappeared from the plane. They suddenly found themselves in the living room of the overseer's cottage. You sure know how to brag, don't you? Anna just looked at her. That was awesome, though. Ahaha. Mera scratched her cheek. With great power comes great need to show off. Is that why Sophia always wants to be in the center of attention? Everything suddenly made sense for the princess. No, I think that's just who she is. The teal fox shook her head. I can't imagine her not being in the middle of everything regardless of her powers. Fair enough. Anna nodded. She probably would try even harder to make up for it. True. Mera thought so, too. Having agreed that there's no possible constellation where their favorite blonde would ever not be in the center of attention, Mera served something to drink before the two got comfortable on the sofas while chatting some more. By the way, I'm still not quite done about those crystals that store magic. Anna came back to the very first topic she had and the reason why she visited the overseer. Also, thank you very much for the training. I learned so much. Even though you have a better alternative now? The teal fox tilted her head. You're very welcome, too. No, I'm generally speaking here. She shook her head. For my biome, I'll definitely use what I just learned. Then, what do you mean? Can those crystals be used in the regular world outside those domains you and Sophia have? They can. Mera nodded. They're incredibly rare, though. After all, they usually form in areas with high exposure to magic in the first place. Outside of our domains, magic tends to be spread out equally. There shouldn't be more than the ones below Sophia's cherry blossom forest, either, so I doubt she'd like to part with it. Ah, I see. The tiger nodded. Wait, incredibly rare doesn't mean non-existent, right? Correct. The overseer smiled at her. There are around 5 places on the entirety of the beastfolk continent where you could find them. 3 of them are in hard-to-find underground caves. One spot is at the bottom of a massive lake, though the last one is somewhat accessible in a giant crater, so there's that. That is incredibly rare. If not for you, what do you plan to do with the crystals in the regular world? Mera got curious about her motivation. For my people. Anna entered princess mode. I feel like those would be incredibly helpful for a variety of things. Especially for people with magic powers on the low side that have to rely on others. They could save up whatever magic they have left at the end of the day and use it in time when it's needed. With small crystals, there would be little to no danger, either, because even if the regular folk, who aren't gifted or have been boosted, or whatever like Sophia did for me, even saving up a week's worth of magic is nothing in the grand scheme of things. It would make all sorts of convenient things possible, though. That's a tiger for you. The teal fox seemed impressed. Always thinking about the others. Thank you very much. It was a compliment for her. By the way, those crystals are part of the same family as the heating ore you use for your stoves or the light stones that are used in the street lamps. You power them with your internal magic, and those then slowly radiate warmth or light. Oh. Anna's eyes started sparkling. That means it really could be used by everyone after a bit of training. The scarcity issue aside. It's a lot more dangerous, too. After all, with those fixed elements, the result will always be the same. You can't oversaturate it, either. With the unattuned crystals, people could forget how much they charged or misinterpret the glow level and accidentally burn down their house when activating it with something fire-related. Ah. The princess hadn't thought about that part. Well, you have a point there. Wait a moment. She suddenly got loud. Yes? Mera tilted her head. There's a mineral that stores and emits pure magic. There's one that emits heat, one that radiates light. That's how it is. She nodded. There has to be others, right? The tiger got excited again. Like something that spews out water when magic is put into it. Or wind. Wouldn't that be something? The overseer reacted with nothing more than a cheeky grin. That's 100% a yes. Anna had only one explanation for Mera's expression. Let's go. That actually would be even handier. So many quality of life things that could be done with those. I have to talk with Sophia about those. You'd have to find them, too. The overseer found a flaw in her plan. If those exist, I mean, of course. Minor details. The princess was too fired up to care. Once she was set on the topic and felt the need to discuss it with her fellow tiger, Anna thanked the teal fox for the training again before heading back to the cottage. Chapter 112, Friendly Fire. Anna finished the training she received from Mera and was able to detect the levels of raw magic around her much better now. Afterward, the tiger also found out that there potentially are several other minerals that could generate water or air when using raw magic on them, just like the already existing heating or light ores. Oh my, I didn't expect you to come here. Aura was in her pine forest when she got surprised by the unexpected arrival of a certain black-haired jaguar. I heard that your biome is temperate but not cold, and there was a lot of praise for being gorgeous, so I got curious about it. Ari looked around in the area before facing the wolf. It really does look nice. Pines are great trees. The best is the smell, though. She became a quick fan of the forest. Thank you very much, Dot. Aura enjoyed the praise. Are you doing anything right now? Bored? The wolf tilted her head. Maybe a little. Ari shrugged. Everyone seems to be doing their own thing today. Yeah, I love Sophia's domain for that. She nodded. Plenty of room for your own crazy things, but you also can just hop to someone else and play with them. That is true. Anyway, I was just about to burn down most of this forest, so you came at the perfect time if you feel like playing with fire. Aura came back to her question. Eh? The jaguar got loud. Why would you want to burn down this lovely place? Forest fires introduce new nutrients to a forest that help it grow even better. Even though the forest runs on magic? Ari looked confused. Minor details. Seems pretty major to me, though. She tilted her head at the wolf. Well, to be fair, I was just hoping for the nutrient thing to be an added side effect. What's the main motivation, then? I think it would be a shame to destroy this lovely place. I'm unhappy with the terrain. Aura came to the main issue. I made this place before Sophia showed us her cherry blossom forest, and I didn't know you could make your biome something else other than completely flat. Ah, I see. The jaguar nodded while looking around in the forest and noticed that there was no elevation whatsoever. Is that really a reason to burn it down, though? It's still a nice place, and Sophia would be happy to have as much space as possible of her domain covered. It might be better to add a new area to the forest that has improved terrain instead. But I want to burn down a forest. The wolf started to sound pouty. Fair enough. Ari had no chance of going against her on that. So, do you want to join me? In burning this place down or changing the terrain? Yes. Aura's reply was full of smug. I should have seen that one coming. The jaguar looked a little awkward. I mean, I usually only like to burn things when I'm upset, but... That's why you threatened to burn down Sophia's domain so many times already when she misbehaved, huh? Precisely. She smiled at her. Alright, Do you want me to make you angry, or should we just have some fun together? I think I'll go with the latter. The jaguar didn't feel like becoming angry at the moment. How much of the forest do you want to burn down? Whatever happens, happens. Aura gave her a playful reply. We'll start some nice fires and enjoy the show. There's nothing but free spirits in our group, huh? Absolutely. The wolf nodded. Okay, I give you the honor of the first burn. Nua. Ari shook her head. This is your place, so you have to go first. Also, I have the feeling that pine trees take some effort to burn down, so I don't want to embarrass myself by going first and doing no damage. You overthink things too much, my dear. Saying so, Aura turned to her right. Then, she went silent for a few seconds, and immediately after, a massive pillar of fire with a diameter of 100 meters shot into the forest in front of her. Oh, you might be right about the pines being sturdy. Once the flames were gone, she looked at the damage and noticed that while the pines were burned, many big pieces of carbonized trunks remained in the path of destruction she created. The fire isn't really spreading, either. Ari pointed out that while there were still some flames burning here and there, the fire had basically not spread further than the initial pillar. Do you think magic maybe also reinforced them to make the tree sturdier? I'd be surprised if it didn't. The jaguar nodded. Yeah, you're probably right on that. If I had to take a guess, constant burn for longer probably would be more effective than a short burst of strong flames. The jaguar tried to come up with a strategy. Alright, give it a try. The wolf encouraged her idea. Tilting her head, Ari looked around for a little before stretching out her hand in front of her. Sophia is doing it all the time, but I'm not that good at sensing magic levels around me, so I'm not sure if that's a good idea. It will be fine. Aura disagreed with her. Are you sure? Absolutely. She nodded. By the way, what are we talking about? The jaguar just stared at her. You get along well with Sophia, don't you? She felt a sense of déjà vu talking with her. I'm a big fan of Blondie. Ahaha. Ari let out a dry laugh. So, what's the plan? The wolf got interested in her idea. When Sophia uses big types of fire magic, she always releases her internal magic in the area and then lights it on fire, creating a massive inferno that way. It seems like it would be ideal for our situation, but I'm not good at sensing magic, nor do I have much at my disposal in the first place. I'm excellent at sensing magic, and I have way too much of it inside of me, too. Isn't that a nice coincidence? Ari smiled at her. Sure is. Aura nodded. Should we give it a try? Are you sure it's not dangerous? I'm sure it is dangerous. It was part of the reason why the wolf was a fan of the idea. Oi. We'll spread our magic nice and evenly. Then, immediately after we light it, we're going through to good old portal over her and leave the blast zone. Aura gestured at the pink gate right next to them. Contrary to Steph, I don't enjoy being set on fire either. Oh, I like that. Ari quickly calmed down after hearing that she had a plan. Okay, how about I release my magic around the portal area here, and you make a circle around that? You're a lot faster than I am, and you have at least 10 times as much magic as I do, so you can cover a much larger area. That sounds like a plan to me. Nodding once, the wolf then immediately dashed off into the forest. Okay, let's see how this will go wrong. Having some doubts by now, Ari still got to work and also released her own internal magic in the area. Alright, we should be good. Aura returned to the portal after around 15 minutes. Everything in a 10-kilometer radius around us is coated in a nice layer of raw magic. If that isn't enough to get a forest fire started, I'm out of ideas. If your forest survives that, I think it has earned the right to stay, and you have to start new somewhere else. Fair enough. The wolf agreed with her. Anyway, please do the honors of starting the fire. Are you sure you don't want to do it yourself? Absolutely. Aura nodded. It was your idea, after all. Ah, you want someone to blame if it goes wrong, got it. The jaguar saw through her. Ahaha. Reluctantly agreeing to be in charge, the jaguar then used her last bit of magic to create a small ball of fire and shot it into the forest. Then, before it could ignite its surroundings, the duo quickly left through the portal. How long do you think we have to wait? Back in the portal hub, Ari tilted her head while looking at the wolf. That's an excellent question. She had no idea, either. Oh, wait a moment. Sophia made me another portal to the forest on a hill, to overlook everything. That's the place that made me dislike the flatness in the first place, but it would be a good place to see how it's going. It's around 100 kilometers away from the area where we started the fire, so it should be safe for us to go there. 100 kilometers sounds good. The jaguar was okay with the distance, and the two went through the second portal, which led to a different area inside the pine forest. Arriving there and looking in the direction of where they started the fire, the two instantly went silent. Their plan had worked perfectly, and the forest was burning down as they intended. The intensity of the flames was something else, though. Thanks to being on an elevated area, the duo was able to perfectly overlook the flaming inferno that had already reached a diameter of around 50 kilometers and was growing rapidly while eating away the pines. The crackling sound of the raging fire could even be heard from their position. The smoke it created was awe-inspiring, as well. Literal tons of it wafted into the air above the forest, and it was thick enough to block the all-white canopy of Sophia's domain. The smoke was even above the two already, and caused ash to rain down where they were, as well as coating the trees and the ground in a layer of gray. Aura and Ari watched the world burn for a little longer before eventually returning through the portal once the fire was closing in on them at a rapid pace, as well as the smoke and ash getting to a level where it felt dangerous to breathe. Chapter 113, Change of Plans. Ari went to visit Aura in her pine forest and was immediately swept away in the pace of the wolf. In the end, the jaguar agreed to help her burn down the entire forest because Aura wanted to remodel it by adding more varying terrain to it as she disliked how flat it was. Well, magic sure is good fuel, huh? After Ari and Aura evacuated to the portal hub to flee from the raging fire, the wolf wasn't sure what else to say. You think so? The jaguar rolled her eyes while looking at her. It's a good thing the fire couldn't cross through the portal. That's true. The wolf nodded. Not that I know why. Well, Sophia made those things, so it probably has some weird extra features we don't know about. Like nothing dangerous can cross them? I wouldn't be surprised. Fair enough. Ari could see it being the case, too. What are we going to do now, though? That fire is probably going to burn for a week or two. You might be right about that. Though, I'd say that we could take a peek at the core, where we started the fire, as soon as tomorrow. Everything that could burn should have burned by then around there. The smoke and ash might still be an issue, though. The jaguar had doubts about the plan's safety. Nothing a bit of air magic in the form of a massive breeze couldn't solve. That could indeed work. She was okay with that solution. Anyway, now that this is on halt for the time being, is there anything you want to do? Aura then looked at the jaguar. As in? She tilted her head in return. A biome? Yes. The wolf nodded. You made the jungle around the cottage together with Maya, or rather, you two messed around with it, but are you planning anything else? Ari scratched her cheek. I like the jungle a lot, and it already has some characteristics of it, but I'd love an actual full-fledged rainforest. Super dense and with a canopy towering above that blocks all light. The ground level should be super dark, foggy, and moist. Frequent rain, rivers, and lakes. Someone's beast bits are tickled, huh? My inner jaguar would be very happy to have a place like this. She just nodded. Should we make one? Aura liked the idea. It's not a place I usually yearn for, but it sounds fun. Are you sure? Of course. She nodded. We could go on the outskirts of the jungle and get started from there unless you'd prefer to start out fresh in a different place. I think it would look even better if it slowly blends into it starting from the jungle. Ari was warming up to the idea. Alright, let's go. Okay. Having decided on their spontaneous new plan, The duo returned to the cottage and used a portal from there that handily led them to the edge of the jungle. Maya and the jaguar had grown back when they first started using the domain as their base to mess with Sophia. Oh ho, I think this would be a nice area to start. The two arrived on the edge of the jungle, where Aura took a look at their surroundings. Yes. Ari nodded while glancing at the flora around them. The overgrowth and density of the regular jungle had disappeared, and only some larger kapok and a few types of sharia trees remained together with various kinds of palms and general shrubbery. Should we ask Sophia for permission first, though? I don't remember you asking her when doing the first add-on to the jungle. The wolf stared at her. Because I was upset back then. I don't see why we should ask her. Aura tilted her head. After all, she wants all of us to build as much as possible in her domain. Also, it's a tropical rainforest. It's a warm place. Not cold. In conclusion, she'll love it. A fair conclusion. The jaguar saw no flaw in her argumentation. Okay, then let's give this a try. Let's go. The wolf was highly motivated. You said you want to focus on the rain part of the forest, right? Wet, damp, mossy, rivers, lakes, and of course, near constant rain. Why yes. She reacted with a big nod while her tail excitedly swished around in anticipation. My, someone's looking forward to it. Her voice turned cheeky for a second. Though, have you ever been to a rainforest to know what they look like? Unfortunately, I haven't. Ari hung her head. I've only read about it and saw paintings depicting it. Somehow, it feels like my jaguar bits instinctively know how it looks, though. I mean, technically, you are correct. The wolf looked right at her. It's a lot messier than you think it is, though. Especially the ground layer. It's nothing but massive roots, dead and rotten plant material, all sorts of goop, and various types of mushrooms. It smells pretty foul, too. It seems like you have some actual experience? Ari was wondering where her details came from. Have you been there before? I've lived in a rainforest for a while. She nodded in return. That's awesome. It was definitely interesting. Aura kept nodding. Though, most of the life happens in the understory and canopy levels above the forest floor. Only bigger animals that can't climb trees live on the ground level. And insects. Billions of insects. A certain blonde tiger, currently being busy with Fay, suddenly shuddered for some reason. Oh. The jaguar didn't seem to have an issue with that either. Insects are fine, and being on trees is fun. Well, I guess you really are made to be in a jungle. Yes. Ari thought so, too. I bet Sophia and Anna would love it, too. Some tigers live in jungles, too, right? Anna seems like a girl that would love it there just as much as you do. With Sophia, I have my doubts, though. Aura knew about her fear of insects, after all. But Sophia is the most tiger-like tiger I know. She's also terrified about bugs, Sue. She rolled her eyes. I guess it will be fine as long as it's artificially created, but if our future rainforest ever gets filled with actual life, I have a bad feeling about it, now that I think about it. Probably rather similar with the jungle around the cottage. Ah. Ari froze for a second. Well, not my issue. Having a rainforest was more important to the jaguar right now. That's the spirit. Aura liked her reaction. How do you design a biome, though? The jaguar got a little confused when she actually began thinking about their project. For the jungle, Maya and I just dumped our magic into the area, and whatever happened, happened. She scratched her cheek. Finn's place was mostly done, as well, when I started helping out there. The river and lake were something he dug out before we filled it with water using magic. That's a good question. The wolf didn't seem to know, either. Eh? Ari got loud. You have no idea, even though we already burned down your forest? Shouldn't you have thought about that beforehand? Nah, she shook her head. It's more fun this way. It is? Yep. I have much to learn. The usually serious jaguar had difficulties imagining that way of living. You sure do. Naturally, the wolf would happily further corrupt Ari. From what I've seen so far, magic is quite flexible when it comes to us building the biomes here. If we simply imagine our wishes strongly enough, it usually turns out the way we wanted it to. True, magic is pretty lenient, all things considered. The jaguar came to the same conclusion. Details would probably help to shape the rainforest, though? Like, if we release more magic in certain areas and less in others, instead of evenly spreading it out, I'd guess that those areas would develop differently. Oh. Aura nodded. It might be possible to control the density of the forest that way. The question is if it's possible to control the free magic to that level? Like, if we release only half of the magic in a certain area to have a less dense area, can we tell magic to stay like that and not equalize with the surrounding magic? Only one way to find out. The wolf didn't share her worries. I guess so. She couldn't argue with that. We do have an actual problem, though. Yes? Ari tilted her head. What is it? We used up all of our magic earlier when we set fire to my forest. We don't really have any juice left to get started on the rainforest. Ah. She had forgotten about that, as well. I guess we have to reschedule, huh? I still have a bit of power left, but, Aura paused for a moment. We could start by outlining the overall design? You mentioned wanting a lot of rivers and lakes, right? Yes. The jaguar reacted with another big nod. I'd like it to be super tropical and wet. How about we use this massive field over there to lightly draw, with that, I mean dig, some shallow riverbeds with our remaining magic. She gestured at the never-ending green field the jungle moved into. That way, we may be able to design the main area and let magic take care of the rest. That's a great idea. Ari excitedly clapped her hands. Though, you have to remember that I'm quite slow, so this might take a while. I have a plan for that. Saying so, Aura decided to return to her regular, over 2-meter-high version in front of the jaguar. Hop on. You're the best. I know. Her voice was full of smug. Afterward, Ari climbed on Aura's back, and the two spent the rest of the day planning out the rough shape of the rainforest they wanted to grow. Chapter 114, The Grand Search. Having successfully lit the pine forest on fire, Aura and Ari decided to start a new project. The jaguar really wanted to have her own rainforest, and the wolf happily agreed to help her out by growing it with their magic. Let's go on an adventure. Just like everyone else, Steph also wanted to have a fun day, so she went to her favorite catgirl and addressed her while her tail was excitedly wagging from side to side, strong enough to create a bit of a breeze around her. I don't know about that. Maya scratched her cheek. You seem a bit too hyper at the moment. It seems like I'd need to leash our dear dog, or else she'd run away at the first opportunity given. Nah. Steph shook her head. While I like being leashed, it's only if Chloe does it. Kinky. The catgirl nodded a few times. Nice. It really is. She gave her a thumbs up. I can absolutely recommend it. You should talk about that with our dear princess. I'm sure Anna would love to hear more about that. Maya reacted with a cheeky grin. Good idea. By the way, leash aside, what kind of adventure are we talking about? Maya finally got curious about the initial conversation starter. We still have to get to Mera's special place. The dog girl got excited again. She tilted her head. I agree that she's rather attractive, but she's still the mother of your girlfriend, you know? I'm not talking about that special place. Steph got loud. I see why that was your first thought, though. She noticed her unfavorable wording. What else are we talking about, then? Remember when we asked her about anything tentacle-related? Like, if we could create and control them with magic. Right. Maya clapped her hands. I completely forgot about that. On the day we first asked her, Sophia did some things to me that night that left the entire day in a haze for me. Good going, sis. She was proud of her for a moment before continuing. The tentacle forest. She confirmed that it's possible, and exists, and that she has one in her domain. I remember. The cat girl nodded. She made us a portal to the general area, but told us we have to find it ourselves. Yep, but we were unable to find it on that day. Let's go back to the area and start another search. Her tail was wagging even harder again. I like that idea. Maya was immediately on board. Let's go. The dog girl energetically raised her arm. Being in high spirits, the duo took the portal to Mera's domain, which the overseer had put into the cottage, and immediately went to the area they talked about after noticing that the teal fox wasn't at home for some reason. Do you have any suggestions on where we should search? The two arrived inside a dense broadleaf forest, mainly consisting of oak trees, before Maya pointed to her left. The last time, we went in that direction, if I remember correctly. How am I supposed to know? Steph tilted her head. You're the dog. Sniff out the horny. Not amused by that, she walked over to the cat girl, got on her tiptoes, and up close to Maya before she began sniffing her neck. Found it. Huh. Sounding actually impressed by that, she lightly turned her head, puckered her lips, and lightly blew some air into Steph's ear, which was right next to her mouth. Oi. The dog girl jumped back in surprise, because the sensation was too much. Their ears are very delicate, after all, to say the very least. I have to give it to you. That was a good one. Maya gave her a thumbs up. I still have much to learn, though. She lightly rubbed her sensitive ear while waiting for the slight blush to disappear from her cheeks. You sure do. The cat girl only got cheekier. Seriously, though, what direction do you want to go? That's a good question. Having recovered from the attack, Steph tilted her head. My sense of smell is excellent, but how do tentacles smell? Wet and slimy. Not that that translates overly well into a smell, I guess. She wasn't much of a help. Not really, no. The dog girl shook her head. How about we simply try the opposite direction of last time for starters? I don't have any better suggestion, either. Maya shrugged. We just have to be on the lookout for anything wet and slimy. It shouldn't be that hard. I'm an expert in that. Same. The two noticed they were doing nothing but innuendos today. By the way, leashing aside, how is it going with Chloe? While they were traversing the forest, Maya started a new conversation. Generally speaking, or do you mean what other fun we do besides the leashing? She needed to think about it first. For now, generally speaking. It's going amazingly. Steph nodded. Chloe's the best. Giving Sophia no choice in taking me to this world and meeting her was the best thing ever. Well, she's an amazing girl in the first place, so I would assume all the extra benefits when dating her are the icing on the cake. The best icing possible. I hope you're treating her well, too. I wouldn't dare to do anything else. Because Fay would end you? Maya raised an eyebrow. Because Chloe deserves to be treated perfectly. Good answer. Also, Fay's just grumpy on the outside. Once you break her shell, she gets a lot more playful. The dog girl smiled at her. Fay? Playful? Naturally, Maya had difficulties believing her. Yes. Unexpected. The cat girl could say little else. You would still perish if you ever hurt Chloe and Fay finds out. True. She nodded. It would be deserved, too. Ahaha. Speaking of, how is it going with that sister of mine? Steph decided that it was time to turn the topic around on her. We know that our blondie is a bit on the complicated end, after all. Funny you're saying that. The cat girl rolled her eyes. You two are pretty similar, just that you're even more of a handful. When did I ever mention anything else? She tilted her head. That's your win. Well, I've gotten used to her not being the person she was in our old world anymore, but it still feels odd being compared to her. It's true, so there's nothing wrong with it, and I'm happy about it, but it's still a little weird. Absolutely fair. She didn't blame her. I've never seen her at her worst, only saw some glimpses, but even her change between first meeting her and today is already hard to comprehend, so I can see how it would be weird. I mean, she always was an attention hogger, but there's not an ounce of shyness left. Okay, the awkward dork from back then was adorable, but I much prefer the confident dork. Yes. Steph thought so, too. I'm so happy for her. We feel much more like sisters now, too. Even though you look a lot less like that now. Ahaha, the violet dog girl scratched her cheek while thinking about the blonde tiger. We do have different fathers, so it's fine. I mean, sure, but. Shush. Hee hee. Maya liked her reaction. There's one thing she could take after you a little more, though. Oh? She got curious. You're a lot more openly horny. Sophia's up for it whenever I want to do it, unless I messed up with something, but it's rare that she initiates things. Maybe you're just too horny that she doesn't feel the need to initiate things? I tried waiting for her to take the first step, but she was fine with just cuddling. The cat girl sounded extremely upset. How long did you wait before giving up? A whole 4 days. Maya raised her voice. Yeah, you're definitely too eager, which causes her to take it easy. There's no way I could wait even longer. Then don't complain. The dog girl rolled her eyes. Well, during the times she does initiate things, it's about 3 times as great as usual, so I guess it comes with some upsides, too. She had no intentions of changing. I would imagine it's similar with you and Chloe, though? I mean, you are always up for it, too, after all. Not at all. The dog girl shook her head. I mean, of course, I am, but Chloe's much hornier than I am. She totally overpowers me, which is amazing. Nice. I mean, I may have been the one who jokingly mentioned a leash, but she's the one who immediately went shopping and put a collar on me the following night. Needlessly to say, it was great fun. It's always the innocent-looking ones, huh? Always. Steph nodded. Still, aren't you a bit too compatible with your dog form? This and that are totally unrelated. The dog girl turned her head away. You've been the submissive type before already? She chose not to answer that. She knew that there was no reply that wouldn't give Maya even more opportunities to attack. That being said, I would have imagined you to be a different type. She cut her some slack. After all, you're quite open about all things horny. Again, completely unrelated. She shook her head. Eehee. Enjoying the blush on Steph's cheeks for a moment, Maya let out a soft chuckle. Afterward, while keeping up the horny topics, as there was no one around to stop them, the duo continued to search Mera's domain for the fabled tentacle forest they longed to find to please their perverted minds. Chapter 115, The Skills of a Dog. Maya and Steph went to Mera's domain together to continue their search for the tentacle forest the overseer mentioned existed in her place. Being the perverts they are, they couldn't just not find it without losing their precious title of being perpetually horny. By the way, what does a tentacle forest look like? The two were still in the middle of a dense broadleaf forest when the catgirl tilted her head. Well, it's a forest full of tentacles? Steph looked back at her with a questioning expression. I figured as much, but how does it actually look? Like, is it full of normal trees where some tentacle-like vines dangle down from? Is it green? When I think about tentacles, plant colors aren't the first that come to mind. True. The dog girl nodded. I'd go with pink. Also, when I think about tentacles, I feel like a cave filled with them to be more natural. Not to mention that their shape should be more like, she decided against finishing her sentence. Green vines dangling down trees sounds more like a regular jungle to me. So, what does that mean? Maya scratched her cheek. Is Mera messing with us and is trying to sell some regular vines as tentacles to us, or are we taking the forest part too literally? Well, I doubt Mera would mess with us like that. Steph shook her head. Really? From what I've seen so far, Mera loves to mess with people, though. I don't disagree with that, but she also knows how important being horny is to us. After the Chloe fiasco, she's sworn not to mess with important things. I'm not sure if I would put us being horny and disappointed that there are no tentacles to play with on the same level as Chloe not knowing who her mother was for the longest time. Maya had her doubts about the comparability here. I am disappointed in how unenthusiastic you really are about sexy times. I'll tell Chloe about what you just said. The cat girl slowly shook her head. And how little you think about the probably worst chain of events in her life in this world. I am deeply sorry. Please don't. Steph immediately sank to her knees and started pleading with her. Fine. Phew. Looking visibly relieved, she stood up again. In all seriousness, though, I was just generally speaking. Yes, Mera likes to mess with people, but this doesn't seem like her style. Alright, let's assume you're right. What are the alternatives? Maya was still not entirely convinced, but at least quite entertained the idea for now. Should we ignore the forest part and search for a cave or something else below ground instead? I mean, we are in the domain of an overseer, the overseer of magic, to be exact. What are the chances of underground forests being a thing here? A dark tentacle corner and/or cave being a part of that doesn't seem impossible. I hate how that makes sense. Why do you hate it? The dog girl disliked her lack of enthusiasm. We're inside an overgrown forest right now. Visibility is low, to say the least. She gestured all around her while saying so. How easy do you think it will be to find a hole or cave entrance leading underground in this environment? Ah. Steph finally understood the issue. Already, my dear dog, sniff out a cave for us. Do caves even have a smell? Steph got loud. Okay, maybe a damp or moldy smell, but that's not something you would notice far away from the entrance. So useless. How about you listen to cave sounds and find an entrance that way? She glared at the cat girl. My hearing isn't that good. You always hear Sophia, Chloe, or me trying to come up with some mischief, no matter how far you are away from us. That's just because the three of you are unable to be secretive and are silent when plotting things. Steph had nothing to counter. We're in quite the dilemma, huh? There's one dog trick that could help us, though. Oh? It's time to dig. Steph pointed at the ground in front of her feet. Let's dig straight down and see what happens. Are you sure that's a good idea? The cat girl raised an eyebrow. It's never a good idea to do anything straight, but I'm out of options. Forced to go straight, huh? Exactly. She nodded. A horrible fate. You two really are sisters. Maya had to smile. Sophia has to make the same joke at least once a week, too. I'm so proud of her. Alright, fine, let's give it a try. I mean, the worst that could happen is us breaking into a cave and falling, but that's nothing magic can't solve. There's no lava close to the surface in real life either, so we're definitely fine. Steph energetically raised her arm. Lava? The cat girl looked confused. Don't worry about it. Okay? Let's go. Ignoring her, the dog girl immediately got to work and began using her magic to instantly create a hole right below them. Aha! Roughly 10 minutes after Steph started digging, things took a turn. As indicated by Maya's scream, the two broke through the ceiling of a cave and fell to the bottom of it before even being able to react. Luckily, it wasn't that deep, and there was a little lake right below them. I guess there's a reason why you don't dig straight down, after all. A few moments later, the duo swam over to the shore and sat down there. While being dripping wet, the dog girl awkwardly scratched her cheek. I knew that nothing good ever comes from anything remotely related to being straight. You should be more like me. The cat girl lightly shook her head while looking at her. I never even thought about giving anything straight a try because I just know it's of no use for me. You are so wise. Steph had nothing but admiration for her. Dot. Once they agreed that anything straight was useless to them and just complicated things, the two dried themselves after having taken an involuntary bath before looking around and getting familiar with their new surroundings. It's surprisingly not that dark in here, huh? The dog girl was happy she could see quite well inside the cave. Well, the veiling light is certainly helping. Maya pointed up at the hole they fell through. Fair enough. She nodded before looking around some more. Although, that tunnel also seems kinda bright, doesn't it? The dog girl pointed to her right, where a passageway was leading away from the cave. That is true. The cat girl also looked in that direction. I wonder what it could be. Tentacles? Her eyes started sparkling. That light up? Maya looked confused. There are many glow-in-the-dark toys, so why shouldn't tentacles glow, too? The dog girl raised her voice. There are? Maya got even louder. I'll show you the next time we go shopping in the other world. Awesome. Alright, let's go and take a look at what's going on there. She pointed at the tunnel. Sure. The cat girl nodded and began walking towards it to find the source of the light. Oh. Walking through the passageway for a couple of minutes, the duo eventually found out why it was illuminated the way it was. Well, I didn't see that one coming. Maya looked up towards the source and noticed that the two were at the bottom of a massive ravine. It was just actual light, huh? Yeah, Steph hung her head. The most boring possibility. Miffed about it not being glowing tentacles? Absolutely. She nodded a couple of times. That would have been so much more fun. I guess you have a point. Maya couldn't blame her. Do you know what is even worse? We were only a few hundred meters away from finding that ravine above ground. The digging and falling into the lake were completely unnecessary. As the damage is already done, should we continue for a little while longer? The cat girl looked at her. I won't let you go before we find the tentacles. Will you let me go when we find them? Maya raised an eyebrow. Of course. The dog girl nodded again. After all, you have to go and get Sophia while I pick up Chloe. They need to be in on the fun, after all. I see. She had no objections to her plan. By the way, should we explore that area a little more? Maya pointed further down the ravine, where it seemed to be opening up a fair bit. With the overhang of the rocks, it's actually starting to look like an underground forest, so we have that going for us. If there's a tunnel or cave somewhere nearby that area, Mera would have been technically correct with her claim. That's the best type of correct. Once they had agreed on a course of action, the two picked up the pace. They explored more of the ravine for the next couple of hours before eventually arriving at a larger cave-in that seemingly had overgrown over a long period of time. It being at the bottom of the ravine and encased by rocks, gave off a feeling of an entire ecosystem being below ground. From there, Maya and Steph checked every corner in the hope of finding anything out of the ordinary, like another cave or tunnel. Eventually, they actually found a promising passageway and promptly decided to follow it. It took them a full hour to find something, and they were about to give up when their entire vision suddenly turned pink. Ooh! Their patience had paid out, and both their eyes were sparkling as they took in the very horny sight all around them. Let's go! Steph was especially motivated. Not right now, though. Stopping the dog girl, who had already begun lifting her top to strip, Maya grabbed Steph by her neck and dragged her back home to tell Sophia and Chloe the happy news. Chapter 116, Difference in Intensity. The search for the tentacle paradise Steph and Maya had been engaging in was successful, and the two immediately headed back home to get Sophia and Chloe to tell them the happy news and bring them to the place for a little bit of fun. Sophia. Chloe. The horny duo returned home and immediately called out their partners. Only one of them is there right now. Sophia's voice echoed from the living room. Just arrived a few moments ago, too. My win. Maya smirked at the dog girl before entering the living room. Yeah. She promptly stopped, though. Grr. Steph bumped into the back of the cat girl because she hadn't anticipated her sudden halt. Why did you dash? Wait, who are you? Who is this way too fluffy being? She got excited once she spotted the red-haired fox girl next to the tiger. Minus 500 million points. Fay looked rather disappointed. Same. The blonde nodded a couple of times while agreeing with the fox. There is no such thing as a way too fluffy being. Her disappointment was for a very different reason, though. Fay? Once she heard her voice, Steph immediately realized who the girl was. Eh? It didn't take away the slightest bit of her surprise, though. Huh. Maya also couldn't follow. What is going on? The dog girl began circling around Fay to look at her from every angle. You are way too cute. That's the most amazing thing ever. I like Mera a whole lot, but now it's obvious where Chloe got her cuteness from. That tail of yours is glorious. Why are you not a fox anymore, though? Chloe wanted to see this form, and I've relearned how to do it a little while ago. Right. Steph clapped her hands. I forgot about that plot point. She kept looking at her. This form is amazing, but why aren't you a buff muscle lady, though? I love it, but it absolutely doesn't fit the outward character you established. She had the same expectations and complaints as her sister before. Do you want me to get angry and show you how well this form fits? She doesn't. Sophia vehemently shook her head. She showed you and almost wet yourself, huh? Maya took a wild guess after her reaction. Exactly. The tiger nodded. Fair enough. Steph nodded. Actually, the cute ones often can get the scariest, so I guess it makes sense. I still imagined you to be muscular and all that, though. Then again, it does make sense when thinking about Chloe. After all, her height and fluffiness had to have come from somewhere. You can complain about me not being muscular to Mera. Fay looked at the dog girl. My looks were completely modeled after her taste in girls. Mera has amazing taste, after all. True. The sisters thought alike. She's surely happy to hear it. The fox had nothing else to say. By the way, Steph, as you're someone rather close to Chloe. As much as you regret it. The dog girl finished her sentence. I've spent the entire day with Fay, and she had nothing but nice words for you. That's a complete and utter lie. The girl in question glared at her. Okay, 90% of what she said was nice. Fay couldn't complain about that. I need to hear everything about that later. Steph looked at her sister. Sure. She smiled back at her. I'll also tell you all about how I broke your record in Fay's chase game. There's no way. She looked devastated. Could you focus on my question for the time being? Fay stared at the dog girl while shaking her head. Why are you even asking? Steph looked confused. You look incredible. I have no idea how genetics work in this world with the influence of magic and all, including the two biological moms part, but she'll be delighted to learn more about her roots. There are a lot of bits she inherited from Mera, but it's so obvious that you're her mother. I told you so. Sophia just nodded a few times. That's very reassuring. She let out a sigh of relief. Nervous? The dog girl smiled at her. Well, she scratched her cheek. I mean, it's a big revelation, is it not? It will be fine. Steph gave her a thumbs up. She'll love you even more after this. I think so, too. A new voice joined the conversation. Mera arrived out of nowhere and entered the living room. There, she walked over to the red-haired girl and lovingly patted her head. After all, you're adorable and the reason Chloe ended up being the cutest girl in existence. She was very fond of her two favorite girls. Thank you. She got a little embarrassed over the overseer's compliments. Wow. Anna was right behind the teal fox and stared at Fay with big eyes. We have a new goddess of fluff. You're so pretty, Fay. Well said, my dear princess. Sophia liked her evaluation. At least the princess immediately knew who I was. The red-haired girl glanced at Steph. Ah. Why wouldn't I? Anna tilted her head. It's obviously Fay. It's exactly how I imagined her to be ever since I heard that she has a humanoid version. This princess is something else. The sisters were surprised at how sharp Anna once more had been. Also, thank you very much for being responsible for how Fay turned out to look. They then smiled at Mera. You're very much welcome. She smiled back at them. She's adorable, isn't she? Yes. Is it hard to switch between animal and a more humanoid form? Anna seemed to be a little interested in the process. It seems fun. I know, right? Steph was on her side. I want to learn it, too. It is incredibly hard. The red-haired girl shook her head. I don't even remember how many years it took me to learn. Yes. Mera nodded. It was hard even for me. Oh. The eyes of the princess turned wide. I guess that's definitely impossible for me to learn, then. With today's power level, at least. Well, I guess that makes sense. I mean, it's a type of magic you really want to make sure it works out the way you want it. There are probably like a billion bad outcomes that could happen when changing your body like that, huh? Exactly. The overseer confirmed it for her. I like the regular Fay better. Aura also returned and immediately joined the conversation with a complaint. So do I, my dear. The red-haired girl agreed while shrugging. So fluffy. Ari's opinion was a lot different when she entered the living room behind the wolf. Perfect answer. The sisters gave the jaguar a thumbs up each. Also, you're not going to try and transform into a full tiger. The way she glared at the princess, Ari seemed to have heard that bit before entering the room. Ahaha, she just scratched her cheek in return. This is quite something, though. The jaguar shifted her attention to Fay again. It's not exactly what I imagined when I heard you can also change forms, but when thinking about Chloe, it does make a lot of sense. She'll be delighted when she sees you. I really hope so, too. While we're waiting for our pink girl in question, Sophia. Steph faced her sister. Yes? How come you got first dibs on seeing new Faye? We went to train with each other and tried to beat some restraint into me. Let me guess, it failed? Ari decided to make a guess on the outcome. Absolutely. The blonde smiled at her before looking at the dog girl again. Afterward, we took a little break and simply chatted while the topic eventually drifted to Chloe and how it was going with her after the issues there were. Putting it mildly. The redhead nodded. During that talk, she mentioned that she's relearned how to transform. Naturally, I couldn't let that slide, so I had her show it to me. So envious. Steph raised her voice. I would have loved to be the one she opened up to. I'm also the first she hugged in this form. The blonde decided to rub salt in the wound. You are not. Fay and Mera shook their heads. I meant between Steph and I. Ah. The two nodded. Why? The dog girl just got louder. She tackled me during our game of chase and hugged me to stop me from running. She did it twice, actually. The second time, she caught and hugged me midair before we fell down around 500 meters and right into a lake. It was just to catch her. The hug had no other meaning. Fay tried to play it down. When you caught me during our chases, you used your jaw to bite my neck. It only made it worse for her. It sounds like something you would be into, though. Maya couldn't hold back the comment. Not in this situation and not with Fay. What do you mean by not with me? The red-haired mother of Chloe stared right at her. This is not about me. Steph was having none of it right now. The second time she caught me was about 5 minutes after I beat your chase record with her, by the way. Sophia just kept going. Grrrr. Afterward, Sophia continued to tell everyone about her day with Fay and their chases. Naturally, she made sure to tease Steph as many times as possible to show her just how much fun they had while waiting for the girl of honor, Chloe, who everyone was looking forward to seeing her reaction to humanoid Fay. Chapter 117, Fluff and Fluff. Almost everyone except Chloe met Fay after she changed into her humanoid form, and the group was looking forward to seeing how the pink fox girl would react to her changed mother. While they were waiting for her, Sophia also told everyone about her adventures with the red-haired girl, much to the dismay of Steph, who would have loved to be in her shoes. Roughly half an hour after everyone met the red-haired girl, Chloe finally returned home and immediately froze in place. Faye? While in shock, she naturally had no difficulties identifying the girl in front of her. Surprise. She wasn't sure what to say to her. You said you wanted to see this form of mine, so IOOF. Faye wasn't able to finish her sentence because her daughter had already run up to her and almost made her topple over from the aggressive hug the pink fox girl gave her without warning. She could do nothing else but to simply return the hug for the time being. Ah. Everyone had the same reaction. I prefer the original Faye. Almost everyone. Fan, who had arrived behind Chloe, wasn't a fan of the change he was seeing. I agree, but shush. Laura stared at him while shaking her head. You are so cute. Once the pink fox let go of her, she immediately circled around the red-haired girl a couple of times. Your tail has gotten even fluffier. How is that even possible? It just happened? Faye scratched her cheek. That's where I got my tail from, huh? Chloe was still staring at her. I mean, I already saw the similarities in your full form, but it's even more obvious now. It's exactly the same as mine, just even bigger. That is indeed the case. She nodded. You've got my ears, though. Mera pointed at the ones on top of her head while smiling at her daughter. True. The pink fox smiled back at her before focusing on Faye again. Well, now I also know why I'm so small. Short. The red-haired girl corrected. I'm small and short. You are just short. Yep, the big part came from me. The overseer gave her a thumbs up. Chloe was confused for a moment, but after looking down on herself and seeing nothing but her own chest before glancing at Faye, who could easily see her own feet when looking down, she understood what was meant. Ah. Genetics are a wonderful thing. Steph was pleased about how she turned out. Why do you look like this, though? Chloe tilted her head while looking at her short mother once more. I mean, it makes sense because my features that aren't from Mera had to come from somewhere, and your full form is also adorable, but it isn't exactly what I had pictured in my mind. I especially thought you would have been taller. You can thank your mother for that. The pink fox looked confused. This mother. Mera pointed at herself. When I was teaching her how to transform, I shamelessly took the chance to talk her into transforming into my ideal type of woman. As I wasn't interested in my looks, I had no trouble granting her wish. Fair enough. Chloe had nothing else to say. Wait. Is that why you like Steph so much? She suddenly got loud. They're a very similar type. Speaking about their bodies here. If Steph was a couple thousand years older, then maybe. The overseer shrugged while looking at the dog girl. Just like you, she's just a baby in my eyes. I like her because she has such a bubbly personality and gets along with you so well. I see. She was relieved to hear it. Does that mean I inherited my taste from Mera, as well? Her gaze wandered between Steph and the overseer. Thank you very much. The dog girl gave the teal fox a thumbs up. I'm not sure if something like that is hereditary, but you're welcome. Everyone kept chatting for a while longer, but as Chloe also wanted to have some alone time with Faye, she eventually decided to do just that. Thank you so much for showing me this form. The two went to Mera's hut in her domain, and Chloe happily smiled at the red-haired girl. I'm glad to hear it. Faye nodded once. I was worried about how you'd take it, so I'm happy about your reaction. There's just no way I ever would have reacted negatively, no matter how you ended up looking. I don't care about that. I only care about that you showed me yourself at all. Well, can you blame me for being nervous after having raised you in my other form for the past almost 20 years and then suddenly switching to someone else entirely? I guess that's fair. Chloe could see how it may be tricky. The only thing I'm upset about is that you haven't shown me earlier, though. I'm sorry. That being said, I'm not sure how I feel about my mother looking younger than I do. I do not look younger than you. Faye didn't like that. It's not by much, but I'm still taller than you, too. Yes, that's not wrong, but at least a certain part of my body is a lot more developed than yours, which does make me look more mature. A big chest isn't necessarily a sign of maturity. It literally is, though? Chloe tilted her head. Exceptions like early bloomers aside, of course. In any case, it's way more of a maturity sign than one's height. Fay hadn't expected such a comeback. You still have a baby face, though. Wow. The pink fox rolled her eyes. Again, very mature. By the way, my face is a lot more similar to yours than it is to Mera. Gore, I don't like being sassed by my own daughter. Fay furrowed her brows. Gore, right back at you. Chloe returned the growl. In the first place, it's not a bad thing even if you look younger. It absolutely is. The red-haired fox disagreed. Why? You're so cute. That's not always a compliment, you know? It absolutely is. She disagreed with her. Being cute is most important, after all. Not for everyone. Easy to say as the cutest individual around. Can we stop that topic already? Fay had enough of it. Fine. The expression of the pink fox changed into a slight pout. Thank you. There is a technical question I have about the transformation, though. Chloe sounded a lot more serious again. Yes? Is it just a visible change, or are you actually a regular hybrid right now? I'm the same as you, Sophia, and all your other friends. So, it's the same magic Sophia and Steph used to change themselves from humans to their current forms? Yes and no. What's that supposed to mean? The pink fox tilted her head. The transformation itself is the same as them, but what Mera and I are doing comes with some extra steps beforehand. The sisters threw away their humanity and can never fully turn back because the beast features have become an inseparable part of them. That was why Steph had some trouble with controlling her tail and all that in the beginning, right? Exactly. Fay nodded. So, what's different with your transformation, then? It's complicated to explain. The red-haired girl scratched her cheek. Inside of me, there are two different versions responsible for each body, more or less. When I decide to change, my full form goes on break while my hybrid body takes over. They are fully separated from each other in terms of bodily functions, so they can't influence each other. That way, I won't be affected by extra body parts or organs working differently when switching from one species to another. So, you're a 2-in-1? More or less. Oh, Kay? She was still a little confused. That's why it's so hard and took me so long. Fay smiled at her. If I accidentally mess up and my two forms mix with each other, I'll be in a whole lot of problems. I see. Chloe nodded a few times. Does that mean that if the sister will ever learn that magic, they could return to being normal humans? Not that they would ever want to. Not those two. Not quite. She shook her head. While their bodies would function the same as regular humans, they would still have their beast side sleeping inside of them. Not exactly normal in my eyes. Fair enough. The pink fox understood the reasoning. Wait, Mera is originally a full, too, right? Yes. And both of you had your full side sleeping inside of you when you made me. Does that mean I'm secretly quite a bit closer to being a full than I thought? You shouldn't be. Fay shook her head. Right now, my full form is still inside of me, but it's not active and also not influencing my current body. That should have made it near impossible for you to inherit anything from it, too. That makes sense. Mera might be the better person to ask, though. She's a lot more knowledgeable about it. Okay. She nodded. Well, my outside appearance is that of a regular hybrid, so even if I had more hidden full parts, it wouldn't really matter. That is true. The red-haired girl agreed with her. Anyway, thank you so much for showing me this form after so long. Chloe smiled at her mother. I feel even closer to you now, Mom. I have the most adorable daughter in existence. She had nothing else to say. Ehe. Thank you, that's all I wanted to hear. Are you going to stay as a hybrid form for a while now, or was it a once and done situation? Turning back into a full is even harder, so it might take a while before I'm able to do so. Fay also just smiled at her. I don't even care that it sounded like a lie. Chloe was happy that her mother was going to stay like that for a longer time. The duo chatted for a bit longer before eventually heading back to the others in the cottage to spend some more time together with everyone. Chapter 118, Playful Wolf. Chloe finally met the hybrid form of her mother, Fay, and she was an instant fan of it. Naturally, she was quite surprised in the beginning. Still, it immediately made her feel even closer to her, because the pink finally saw her true heritage. After all, Fay had conceived her when she was in this form, as she wanted to make sure that Chloe would become a humanoid hybrid after having been a regular human in her previous life. Fay. The moment the mother and daughter duo returned, Steph instantly faced the red-haired girl. Yes? I demand a rematch. In what? She tilted her head. In our game of chase. The dog girl stared right at her. Sophia having beaten me is unacceptable. I'm sure you're still a little rusty after having just transformed, but still. She shot me out of the air 500 meters above the ground. The blonde raised her voice as she disagreed with Fay being out of shape. Okay, very rusty. Steph corrected herself. Thank you. The red fox smiled at her. I know you'd understand me. Sure thing. You two are insane. Hee hee. What is all this about? As Chloe wasn't there when they talked about it earlier, she was confused about what was going on. Fay and Steph came up with a game that increases stamina, tactical thinking, strength, and many other things. Sophia answered her. Well, okay, it's a glorified version of hide and seek, but if you're overpowered and filled to the brim with magic, even that can become extreme. Yup. The two in question nodded. The most important part is the leaderboard, though. The blonde's voice turned smug. Steph managed to get away from Fay for a little over 2 hours, and I just beat her record by some solid minutes. Yes, you've beaten my standing record against Fay in her absolute prime after she just transformed into her new body and probably barely knows how to move in it yet. By a mere few minutes, as well. That's how it is. The red-haired girl gave Steph a thumbs up. I don't like you two getting along at these times. Sophia raised her voice. No, that's the best part. Chloe disagreed with her. If them getting along means you getting teased, well, tough luck. Oi. She glared at the pink fox. Also, stop with the being rusty part already. She then focused on the duo again. There's just no way Fay was even more agile as a foal. I'd love to show you the place we use for our game in Mera's domain, but it's currently under construction after the last time. Yes, last time got a little too intense. Fay awkwardly scratched her cheek while glancing at the dog girl. Under construction is a nice way of describing that massive, multiple kilometer wide crater you made in my domain where once a beautiful forest biome was. Mera slowly shook her head. Ah. They just looked away from her. We're sorry. You aren't. The overseer didn't believe them. I feel like I want to see it. Chloe got curious. The crater? Mera looked at her. No, them chasing each other. She shook her head. It seems like a fun event to watch. Though, them zooming through a forest probably wouldn't be the most visible event. Ah. Mera nodded. Yes. Steph smiled at the pink fox. I doubt it would be overly entertaining, at least in the beginning when only running is involved. In a forest, you can't really see much in the first place, as well. I think I can help with that. Mera faced her daughter. I can make us a little platform above their playground and make their position visible to us with magic. We still won't be able to see them in person, but we can track their position and watch the progress. Oh. Chloe seemed to like the idea. Fay, can we do that? I don't see why not. She couldn't win against the sparkling eyes of her daughter. She then leaned over to Steph and started whispering. Remember that we can't go all out when she's watching us. Absolutely. She nodded. I heard that. The pink fox shook her head. I want to play, too. Laura's excited-sounding voice joined the conversation. While you two were gone, the sisters told me about the chase thing, and it sounds like a lot of fun. She stared at the red-haired girl. I want to see how long I can elude the master. Oh. Fay lightly clapped her hands. Finally, a challenge. Hey. The sisters in question didn't like that. Do you think either of you can beat me? Full of smug, the female wolf looked at them. Yes. Sophia nodded. In a fair match that doesn't involve any sort of cheating on your part. She lightly corrected herself. After all, I know a fair share of your tricks. The blonde quickly turned silent. I take you on. Steph was a lot more feisty. I like your confidence. Aura was a fan of the dog girl. I give her 5 minutes. Fen shook his head. At best. The chase starts with a 5-minute head start for the one running away. Fay looked at him. I know? He didn't understand why she corrected him. Make it at least 6. Steph got loud. You should know by now that I'm a realist. He just kept shaking his head. You are SOO not. She only raised her voice more. Yeah, that's not a convincing argument. Everyone agreed with her. Fen made a slight pause. The best I can do is 5:30. Challenge accepted. It was enough for the dog girl. Let's go. She energetically raised her arm high in the air. Fay, afterward, I take you on. I'm looking forward to it. Fay smiled at her. Mera, how quickly can you prepare the magic and viewing platform you mentioned earlier? It will be done the moment we arrive in my domain. The overseer gave Steph a thumbs up. Perfect. Perfect, indeed. Sophia nodded a couple of times. My domain already has sustained enough damage today. You complain too much. Fay glared at her. I barely destroyed any of your precious trees during our chase. I wasn't talking about you. Oh, never mind then. The red fox shrugged in response. So, why did you and Ari light your entire pine forest on fire? The blonde faced Aura and the jaguar. Naturally, as it happened in her domain, she knew about that already. We're working on a project. The female wolf gave her a playful reply. For the record, I suggested doing the project in a different place rather than burning down the current forest. Ari tried to save herself. For the record, our beloved jaguar came up with the idea of how to burn it down and is responsible for it burning with the intensity it currently is. Aura was having none of it. Ah. Someone had fun today, huh? Anna smiled at her pyromaniac girlfriend. It, was pretty entertaining. She couldn't deny it. Afterward, the group went to Mera's domain, where the overseer transported everyone except Steph and Aura to a floating island hovering over a seemingly never-ending and massively overgrown broadleaf forest. Yep, I can't see a thing. Chloe got closer to the island's edge and looked down. Just trees and green. And green trees. Steph is there, and Aura is over in that area. The teal fox walked up next to her and pointed at 2 spots in the forest below them. Immediately after, 2 red dots appeared roughly a kilometer away from each other. Only we can see them, so it won't interfere with their game. Oh. She lightly clapped her hands. That will be so fun seeing them close in on each other. You know, Sophia joined them at the edge of the island. The dots are perfect for tracking them, but if this becomes a regular thing, we could attach a camera to each of them so we could watch what they're seeing if we put a TV up here. That would be amazing, too. Chloe liked that a lot. We could turn it into a whole tournament to watch. A good tournament needs a solid betting system, too. Mera was in on the plan. Anyone, note down your estimated time for the current match, and the closest guess will receive a special prize. The 5-minute wait at the start of the chase is not included. What's the prize? Sophia raised an eyebrow in interest. That's a secret. So sly. 17 seconds. Fen was the first to reply. I agree that she has no chance, but Steph should hold out a little longer than that. Fay lightly shook her head. After all, she managed to get quite a respectable time against me. You have heard that they agreed on no rules, right? The male wolf stared at her. She even allowed Aura to use detection magic because the dog wanted to see how fast she is. The red fox paused for a second. 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Her confidence in Steph was short-lived. You two are so pessimistic. Chloe didn't like how they were underselling her girlfriend. She'll last at least an hour. I don't know. Sophia scratched her cheek. Fay got me in like 10 or 15 minutes when she was allowed to use detection magic. I'll pick 15 minutes. 30 minutes for me. Anna just picked a number. Steph's way too energetic to be defeated so quickly, so I'll go with 45 minutes. Ari had a little more faith in her. Alright, I'll refrain from adding my guess, as I don't want to hurt any feelings. Mera showed anyone a cheeky smile before clapping her hands loudly enough for it to echo through the entire forest, which was obviously amplified by magic. They had a little longer than 5 minutes now, but let's see how this turns out. Instantly after the clap, the forest turned noisy. There was a massive explosion-like sound, and one of the red dots zoomed towards the other at tremendous speed. It was so fast and violent that it parted the entire forest, dug up the ground, and uprooted the trees in the path between the dots. Mere seconds later, the two red dots had overlapped and merged into a single one. And that's my win. Finn's voice was full of smugness as he looked at the path of absolute destruction his girlfriend had created when catching the violet dog in a literal instant. Chapter 119, A Real Challenge. Aura learned about the chase the sisters had with Fay and wanted in on the fun. Steph, being the feisty girl she was, challenged her in a no-rules match because she wanted to find out how fast the female wolf really was. Rather unsurprisingly, the dog girl met a quick end. Fay, have you been holding back on me? Mera transported Steph and Aura to the floating island the others were on, and the dog girl faced the red fox. Well, she scratched her cheek. I didn't go at my absolute 100%, mostly because, contrary to that lunatic of a wolf, I have some self-preservation instincts, but I wasn't holding back either. You're too soft. Aura didn't even react to the lack of self-preservation she was accused of. Anyway, ignoring her, Fay kept looking at Steph. This was a no-rules match, and you even let her use detection magic. I'm not sure if I would have been able to catch you in 23 seconds like she did, but I wouldn't have taken more than a few minutes, either. You're good at hiding and playing tricks, but once I locked down on you, our chase always was quickly over, as well. Fair enough, I guess. The dog girl had little she could say there. With proper preparation and some sensible rules, it probably would have taken me closer to an hour. Aura tried to make it sound a little better. Does that mean you think you're better than Fay? Steph tilted her head. It means that she likes you a lot more than I do. She just gave her a smug reply. I like you a whole lot, don't get me wrong, but I don't, unconsciously, make it easier for you. I would never. The cheeks of the red-haired girl turned a little pink. Sure. The female wolf didn't buy it. Of course you wouldn't. Gore. You love to hear it. The voices of Steph and Chloe overlapped. You do not. Fay disagreed before glaring at Aura. We'll have our chase next, right? I'll make you regret this. Just what I was hoping for. The female wolf was looking for a challenge, after all. Any rules we should agree on beforehand? No detection magic. Other than that, anything goes. Exactly what I wanted to hear. Nodding once, Aura walked over to the edge of the floating island they were on. Let's go. I'll make short work out of you. Still slightly upset, Fay walked towards the edge on the other side of the island. I'll come after you in exactly 5 minutes. Saying so, she jumped over the edge and down into the forest. I can't wait. Aura quickly did the same. I don't like how it's becoming normal that everyone in this group is jumping down hundreds of meters somewhere like it's nothing. Ari wasn't a fan of everyone just jumping down the floating islands, they had been rather often lately. Don't worry, you'll soon do it, too. Steph smiled at her. I won't. She disagreed. I need to remember that this body is more expressive. Down in the forest, Fay was still slightly embarrassed over how effortlessly Aura had toyed with her. Also, how do I not eat my own words now? She looked around the area for a moment while scratching her cheek. Unfortunately, that wolf is even more bite than bark. Figuratively and literally speaking. I'll have a hard time finding, let alone catching her. Once she finished complaining, the red-haired girl went silent and began concentrating on her surroundings to get used to the sounds of the forest, to understand and notice when anything else made a sound. I prefer the original fox, but this Fay is pretty cute, too. Aura, who was in a different part of the forest, was a lot more relaxed. Okay, let's make some preparations here. Saying so, the wolf changed her size. She was already in her smaller mode, but she decided to shrink further down to a shoulder height of roughly 50 centimeters. I lose some speed like this, but I've also become a lot nimbler and make less sound on top. Having decided on a rough strategy, the wolf wasted no more time and got going to further increase her distance from the fox in the time she had left. About 15 minutes had passed since Fay started searching for Aura, but things weren't going well. Nothing. She shook her head. I can't hear a single thing. It seems like Mera brought us to one of the forests that has no animal life yet, This is going to be even harder than I thought. I forgot how skilled that wolf really is. To not make a single noise in a place where there is nothing to mask anything is quite impressive. It's so tempting to take a look at my detection magic. Another 20 minutes of Aura zooming through the forest passed when she made a slight break. I've made sure not to create a single sound, so she shouldn't have a clue where I'm at. That makes me want to mess with her. Her mischievous side got the better of her. Saying so, the wolf concentrated for a second and used a bit of fire magic to create a small explosion before sprinting away from the location. What was that? Naturally, Fay was unable to overhear this unnatural sound. Good try, but it's way too obviously intentional. Her expression turned into a smirk. Sophia did that way too often during our chase. Unfortunately, her experience with the tiger made her too suspicious about the sound. Alright, now I know where not to go. Taking into account where the floating island was and where Aura jumped into the forest, the red-haired girl turned at a 90-degree angle away from the explosion sound to her right and continued to run in that direction. Alrighty, I wonder if my little boon made her get closer to me. The wolf was having a great time. Then again, we're dealing with Fei here. She let out a small chuckle. Knowing that stubborn and overthinking girl, she probably heard the sound and deliberately went in a different direction because she thought I was tricking her. Outsmarting the smart girl, Aura then decided to create another explosion far away from her before continuing to run in the same direction as before. I knew it. Hearing the second expression, Fay's expression turned smug again. This time, the sound came from somewhere else entirely. Aura's fast, but not that fast to close the gap in between so quickly. Feeling validated, the fox girl also continued to run in the same direction as before, unknowingly further widening the gap between them. Yeah, I'm sure she's overthinking it. Half an hour had passed, and Aura made another break. Still nothing. She shook her head. Fay's either also ultra-silent, or she's thinking the explosions were bait. Well, they were bait, but in an honest way. Okay, to be fair, I probably wouldn't bite on that either. The wolf couldn't blame her for not going towards the sound. Not to mention that the second explosion was in a completely random place, too. We might be in this forest for a while, Not exactly sure what to do next, Aura decided to stay in the same place for a little while longer to see if she could come up with a plan. It has gotten silent again, Fay had gotten just as confused over the situation. What was her goal with the explosions, anyway? She should know that I'd never fall for that. She raised her voice. Then again, I did fall for it when Sophia did it. Her expression turned ever so slightly awkward. It is Aura, though. I wouldn't be surprised if she wanted me to think I was getting tricked and she was tricking me this way. That would mean that the first explosion was actually in the place she was at that time. The second sound in a different area then was to herd me to her because she knew I wouldn't be going towards the sound. Managing to overthink the events even more, Fay slightly adjusted the direction she was traveling in and headed over to the place where she heard the first explosion. Mera was still in the same place as before and had spent the last 15 minutes thinking of a plan. Wait, am I overthinking things, too? She just came to a horrible conclusion. Nah, there's just no way that could be the case. It was too unbelievable for her. Anyway, let's see. Let's try to imagine Fay's train of thought here. The first explosion probably made her change direction away from it. She knew where I landed after jumping from the island, so she probably went in a direction that made sense for me to take. The second explosion in a completely random place after probably just solidified her thinking, and she simply continued on the same path. Looking up and through an open spot in the canopy of a tree, the wolf located the floating island to get a reference of her position. Okay, that would mean she probably went somewhere in that direction. Let's make this chase a little more interesting and get closer to her. Motivated by all the wrong things, the equally overthinking wolf broke into a sprint to get closer to the fox. That's at least what she thought she was doing. This will take a while, won't it? Back on the island, Sophia was getting ever so slightly bored of watching the two red dots zoom in every direction except the one that would get them close to each other. Also, what were those two explosions for? Chloe tilted her head. Those were auras, right? Shouldn't you be as inconspicuous as possible while running away? Well, Fay's at a massive disadvantage here. Fun looked at her. If Aura wants to, she can travel at tremendous speed without making a single sound. Fay can most likely do it, too, but that's not going to help her at the moment. This chase could literally go on for weeks without them meeting each other. He paused for a moment. Aura probably wanted to spice things up a little. Makes sense. The pink fox nodded a couple of times. Even though it wasn't the most exciting activity right now, the group continued to watch them for a while longer to see if anything would happen. After all, they had nothing else to do, anyway. Chapter 120, It usually doesn't involve arson. Fay and Aura started their chase after the female wolf teased her about all sorts of things to get the fox all riled up. Unfortunately, both girls were insanely skilled, a bit paranoid, and also continuously overthought things. Thanks to that, even after hours of zooming through the forest, their chase hadn't advanced in the slightest. Wait a moment. Fay was still speeding through the forest while searching for Aura when she suddenly came to an abrupt and complete stop. I'm still operating on Sophia's rules. I wasn't allowed to destroy her cherry blossoms, but this is just a regular forest in Mera's place. It doesn't matter if I get a little wild. Immediately after, she lifted her right arm, and a pillar of fire shot away from her hand. It burned a 10-meter wide and 500-meter long trench into the forest and only left ash behind. She wasn't done with just that, though. Keeping the flame going, the red-haired girl slowly rotated herself and ended up burning away a perfect circle of a diameter of a kilometer with her in the center of the forest. Looking rather proud of herself, Fay then slowly walked to the edge of the destruction in front of her. W.O. Back on the island, Chloe's eyes grew wide. Can you really still call this hide and seek? Fay finally stopped messing around. Steph lightly clapped her hands. I don't know what she was doing the past 2 hours, but it's finally closer to our challenges. You two usually play like that. The pink fox stared right at her. How else are you supposed to play hide and seek? The dog girl tilted her head. It usually doesn't involve arson. Exactly. Sophia agreed with her. That sounds so boring. She couldn't understand the duo. Steph then looked at her sister. How did you and Fay play again? The complete destruction of the environment is an integral part of finding someone, after all. It is not. Chloe and the blonde vehemently shook their heads. It sure is. She disagreed with them once more. Anyway, she tracked me normally, I guess? Finding hints of me having been there like broken branches and stuff, as well as following my scent as her nose. And you only held out like a couple more minutes than my record? Steph's expression turned smug. The world is okay again. Why? I would hold out a week like that. She smirked at her sister. When Fay chases me, she instantly starts a couple of fires to burn away any above-ground hiding spots, and I usually resort to digging tunnels with magic once I run out of forest and hope she doesn't blow up the dirt I'm currently in. You were playing in baby mode. Sophia wasn't sure what to say there. She thought that her chase with the fox was intense, but it appeared that she was wrong about that. I like that you and Fei are getting along, but I really have my doubts about the intensity of your way of doing things. Chloe slowly shook her head. It's fine. Steph just smiled at her. Anyway, I'm so glad that my previous time still has some meaning. Gore. The blonde didn't like that. Next time we do the chase, I'll choose a place I don't care about. Oh ho. Narrowly dodging the flaming inferno, Aura stopped at the edge of the still intact forest and slightly peeked her head out of it to get a glimpse of the pyromaniac fox girl. I was wondering when she would finally get serious. She was having a lot of fun. Okay, it's time to stop with the baiting, huh? Having survived the first wave, Aura decided it was time to put a little more distance between them to make sure she didn't get caught up in another fire attack. It would have been too easy to get her with that, wouldn't it? Faye scratched her cheek. I was a little hopeful to see a slightly charred wolf with a still lightly burning tail. Just like Steph looked like the first couple of times before she learned not to get too close to me. She took another glance at the burned remains around her. Well, wishful thinking won't get me anywhere. Shrugging once, the fox arrived at the edge of the circle of her destruction, where she raised her arm once more before burning down another significant portion of the forest. I wonder if she gets punished by Mera for all this later on. Aura had gotten away from the inferno and lightly chuckled to herself. She's making quite the mess, after all. Though, knowing Mera, she can probably fix the whole area with a snap of her finger. The wolf had no doubts it wasn't an actual issue. That being said, did we set up an out-of-bounds area? It wouldn't be hard to get so far away that our dear fox runs out of magic before she gets to me. She found a slight flaw in their game. Trying to account for that, Aura decided to change directions and began circling around the inferno to keep everything relatively contained. I think I just found a flaw in this. It seemed like Faye also noticed an issue. We never agreed on the playing field. She could go on forever, and I'd need to burn down half of Myra's domain to find that wolf. She scratched her cheek. Myra's quite lenient, but I doubt even I would be excused for that much damage. It might be beneficial to narrow down her position a little more before it's time to get aggressive. Saying so, Faye stopped setting the forest in front of her on fire and looked down at the ground. Immediately after, it began to move, and a pillar of dirt shot up to create a platform for her to stand on. Oh! Aura heard the sound of moving earth and took a quick peek through the canopy of a tree. There, she saw the red-haired fox standing on a roughly 200-meter-high platform as she was surveying the area below. She noticed the downsides of mindlessly burning down everything, huh? The wolf nodded a few times. Let's see what happens if I do this. Saying so, she used a bit of magic and cut down a tree as loudly and flashy as possible. Faye looked at the random tree that suddenly exploded a little bit away from her. I know that she's baiting me, but there isn't much I can lose, is there? Let's go and take a look. She then jumped off the platform and dove into the forest, where she saw the suspicious movement. That playful little wolf. It seemed like she wanted to say something else as she saw the exploded tree, a couple of deliberately placed paw prints in the dirt, as well as a cutely drawn heart right next to them, together with an arrow pointing further down in the forest. Slightly annoyed by her teasing, Faye glared in the direction of the arrow before sending a massive pillar of fire along with it. She's so hot-headed. Further along inside the forest, Aura dodged the rapidly approaching fire and turned around. At least things are more interesting now. Saying so, she increased her speed a little to put more distance between them. The chasing part is a lot more fun than the hiding part. Letting out a small chuckle, the wolf then turned at a 90-degree angle and drew another arrow into the ground before running further into the forest. Aura's having a good time, huh? Faye found the new arrow and rolled her eyes. I'm starting to wonder how long we'll keep going with this. No rules with the sisters means certain defeat for them because they're just babies with no experience, but it's different with Aura. She might be one of the most experienced beings in existence. As one can see in how everything is just a game to her. She scratched her cheek again. That being said, she wouldn't have a much easier time finding me, either. The fox tried to make herself feel better. Having no better plan for the time being, Fay shot another barrage of fire the way the arrow was pointing before following after it. Someone found the second arrow, huh? Jumping out of the fire's range, Aura just nodded a couple of times in return. Should I wait for her here? I want some more action. She was becoming impatient. Then again, while I like to set things on fire, I don't like to be set on fire. Something that will definitely happen if I just stay here. She shook her head. Also, Fay would probably be angry with me if I gave up like that. Eventually coming up with something, the wolf made another quick art project in the dirt before disappearing into the forest once more. She's gotten bored of the hiding part of the chase, huh? Fay found the last place the wolf was and lightly chuckled when she saw another heart drawn in the dirt. Inside the heart, the words, "Detection OK" could be read. Well, it indeed was becoming a little tedious, so this will speed up things a lot. She closed her eyes for a moment and then turned to her right. Instantly after, she dashed into the forest with tremendous speed. Having entered the final phase of their chase, things quickly became a lot more interesting and heated between the two.